Hey everyone, my name is Jazz, and for today's video, I'm going to share 3 big tips to help you improve your game. These tips are based off of what I've seen in the first Trio Cash Cup of the season on the EU region, so they're definitely worth using in your own game. When watching MrSavage, it seems that he makes some risky plays in edits sometimes, like very open and he's not very protected. But how come it works out for him and not when we do it? Well, it all comes down to this. MrSavage pays close attention to his teammates, and whenever his teammates are pressuring the same enemies, that's when he plays more risky. So in this fight, this should be a fairly good example of how he switches from playing risky and not risky, depending on his teammates. So what you see here, he starts off playing not very risky, like this is not a very risky play, being here, going for a wall. He's piece controlled his own box basically, he's a box away, so he's not pickaxing a wall, he's even got his own cone in front into the opponent's box. But as you can see, he starts to play a bit more risky depending on his teammates a bit later on in this fight. So he starts off like this. Basically just regular box fighting technique, right? Keeps his distance, like he can always back up. He's got 2 walls and a cone to protect himself here, so he can reset the walls or he can edit the cone if stuff goes bad, right? But in this case, the guy's not looking at him, so you know, free shots, he misses. And this is where he starts to play a bit more risky. As you can see, Andretta's on the left, right? And he sees that the wall on the left side is being taken by Andretta. So he does not mind being in front of this wall. If this other guy goes for an edit on him, then Andretta's got his back, basically. He's on the side. So he doesn't mind being a bit more risky here. As you see, he doesn't even get the wall, but he's not afraid of any edits because Andretta's already pressuring him. And as you can see, this risky play even kind of bites him in the butt. Because he does get like completely beamed, but because the fact that his teammates are there, he can just back up, and as you can see, Andretta and Refsguard are both in front of him, so it's not a bad thing that, or I mean, obviously it's not good, but what I'm trying to say is that he's fine. So he only takes the risky plays when his teammates are close and they can basically back him up. As you can see, he can just fully heal up and he's chilling. So what we learn from this is playing with open edits and being in front of somebody's wall, basically just pickaxing or ARing, basically playing not as you should play in a solo, for example, is okay if your teammates are close to back you up. Most of us know how consistent Tayson is able to play. This is partly because he doesn't use many fancy ways of fighting. He just knows how to play solid without taking too many chances. The way he takes walls, for example, is basically always the same. I mean, look at this first game of the Cash Cup. He has a game plan and sticks to it. Alright, so what happens when he doesn't stick to his game plan? Well, in this next fight, you'll see what happens. This is still the first game of the Cash Cup. As you can see, they have loads of kills. And when he approaches this team, he starts off with his regular game plan, right? Just a regular wall take. You notice there's not anyone there, goes up. Again, regular wall take, the same thing he's been doing the entire game. Boom, he gets the knock. And now, actually, what's interesting is that if he would use the same strategy as what MrSavage was doing, he would not have died. So, in his eyes, he's thinking, okay, it's a 3v2. That means he can play a bit more risky, right? That's what we saw MrSavage do as well. This is not where he was meaning to be, so he goes up. But as you can see, he's starting to play a bit more risky here. Like he's going for walls a bit differently than usual. And you can tell that the other team is basically trying to box him. And it actually works. So Tayson actually dies because he diverged from his game plan. And you might be thinking, okay, but earlier you said with MrSavage that it's okay to play a bit more risky if you have your teammates with you. And the funny thing is that in this case, he did not have his teammates with him. But he, like in his mind, it was like, okay, it's a 3v2. I can play a bit more risky. I could just play a bit more aggressive. But what happened was that Forziar was beamed a little bit when he came flying in. So Forziar was actually healing, and Nate was a lot further back. So as you can see, Forziar's in the back healing. Nate's over here, And even though team-wise it's a 3v2, it's actually a 1v2 in reality because Nate and 4ZR are kind of far away. So you see here, Tayson's like, okay, play a bit more aggressive. We got the first knock. It's fine. And now, but I mean, think about it. Is it really a 3v2 when this is the situation right here? I mean, not really. So what you can see here is that Tayson's basically just taking a 1v2. And of course, Tayson does have the best teammates in the world, so he actually survives this, which you wouldn't expect, but they have the chug cannon, so 4ZR takes him back and chugs him up, and they end up fine, and they obviously win this game with 1,000,000 kills. So it worked out, but now you can see what happens when he basically didn't use the rule of MrSavage, paying attention to his teammates, and he diverged from his game plan. For the final player, we'll be looking at 4ZR. 4ZR might be my new favorite player to watch. His awareness is just next level. I'll walk you through a couple of clips which show how having a good awareness will win you fights. Alright, so for this first clip you'll see that he's basically approaching someone's wall, takes it, chokes at it, but that's okay, boxes him, gets a shot. It's too bad it's a 30, so it's basically worthless. I mean, all the damage counts, I guess, but 30 is not what you want. And then while he tries to go for a different angle, he notices the wall gets taken, and instead of panicking or trying to play defensive here, he basically just instantly tries to track his opponent and just goes for a shot, even though it's a worse angle for him. Boom, 175. So I don't want to make the point that you should always just wait for them to edit on you and then just shoot them. But when you don't have an option, like here, he was going to be too slow no matter what. He was not going to be able to get away in time. That's when he that's when he goes for it. So, and in this case, obviously, it worked out wonderfully. So he didn't even get shot. And you might say this is a one-off situation, but this actually happens a second time within this game. So the fact that it happens twice in a single game means that it's probably something he does consistently, and it's just part of his game. Alright, so for this next example, it's basically the end of the Tayson example where Tayson dies. It's the same fight, and you see how 4ZR kind of clutches this up. So first of all, he knows it's a 2v2 at this point, so he knows there's only 2 opponents. And second of all, he knows that his opponents are fighting on that side. So instead of like replacing this, he just goes through. And watch this. So he's in the back. This is just normal. Like you could do this as well. He cracks, does a lot of damage. And watch this. Instead of constantly pressuring this wall, he looks to the left. And this happened. He looked to the left before this guy started shooting. Like he knew the opponent was on the left side, and he just looked left because he knew his opponent was there. And he's not too afraid of the guy on the right anymore because he had just done so much damage to him, so he's basically going to play defensive for at least a couple seconds. So he takes his time and looks to the left. He notices that guy's also white, and this actually kind of looks like he's cheating, but I think it's a replay bug. What you can see here is that I'll slow it down as well. So first of all, he just does damage to this guy. Right? And then boom, as you can see, he turns right before the guy shoots. And this could either be because he knows the team is on the, or his opponent is on the left side, or because Tayson called it out, in which case that's also equally impressive because he knows where Tayson is and he knows where the opponent is going to be in that case. So he just looks to the left and goes for a shot, right, as I showed you earlier. And then instead of constantly pressuring with AR, he switches to his pump. And to be honest, I don't really know what happened here. The replay kind of bugs out. It doesn't show him switching. So, you know, if this is he's definitely cheating, you know, obviously 4ZR is cheating, obviously. No, but it's probably just a replay bug. But yeah, this is some insane awareness. Like the fact that he knows that the guy on the right is probably not going to edit on him, so he's not too afraid of that. It basically allows him to fully focus the guy on the left. It's just, you don't see that very often. It's just very impressive. And then instantly as well, he sees that that guy's leaving, and once he sees that that guy's leaving, that's when he picks up Tayson. Like, you have to slow this stuff down or you're just gonna miss it. I'll play it again on full speed so you see what I mean. He comes in, goes for a shot, looks left. He sees that guy is leaving, and he decides to res Tayson. And they end up winning this game with like 1 million kills. So GG's, and quite impressive. So I have 2 more examples for you guys where basically he tries to gain more information, but it doesn't lead to anything. And I think it's important to show this because it doesn't, every time he does this, it doesn't mean he comes up with something where he sees something important. He just does it all the time. Like for example, right here, it basically looks like a free 3v1, right? He just goes in here. But see, first of all, he looks to the right, make sure there's no enemy there. Even though his teammate died, he's looking back to make sure there's no one behind him, right? There's no one there. Now he gets a shot. But the fact that he looks behind him twice to make sure there's no one there, it just shows how focused he is on gaining information and having proper awareness, where he's not fully focused on one thing until he knows what's happening around him. The second example of this kind of information gathering mentality is shown here, which is still the same game. And you see that he knows basically that the entire team's on the right side, but he first looks left to make sure there's no one hiding or there's no one on the left side. And then only once he knows that, that's when he proceeds, because he's among other people's builds. So he wants to make sure that he's not going to get bit in the butt, you know? He wants to make sure that everyone is on this side. To recap, use your teammates to play a bit more aggressive and risky, like MrSavage. Have a game plan and stick to it, like Tayson. And finally, watch your opponents and understand what they're doing so you can be ready for anything, like 4ZR. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Use these tips in today's Cash Cup, and I'm sure you'll do great. See you next week.